This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices dipped in Asian trade on Thursday, extending losses amid uncertainty over how U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed tariffs and energy policies would impact global economic growth and energy demand. Brent crude futures fell 26 cents, or 0.3%, to $78.74 a barrel at 0427 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude, WTI, eased 23 cents, or 0.3%, to $75.21. In the prior session, Brent futures settled at $79 in a fifth straight day of losses, and WTI futures settled at $75.44 in a fourth consecutive day of declines.
U.S. oil and gas producers are thrilled that President Donald Trump wants to encourage domestic energy development, but say his decision to withdraw the United States from international climate cooperation will not help their investment plans in the global transition to cleaner energy. The position reflects a rare note of discord between Trump and Big Oil, one of his most important constituencies and long considered the top villain behind climate change for pumping and selling the fossil fuels driving planetary warming. Removing the United States from the Paris climate deal for the second time was among a flurry of first-day moves by Trump aimed at pumping up already record-high domestic energy production, sending a signal to the rest of the world the U.S. will no longer engage in multilateral efforts to combat climate change.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Saudi Arabia's crude oil exports in November jumped to their highest level in 8 months, data from the Joint Organization's Data Initiative showed on Wednesday. Crude exports from the world's largest exporter in November rose 4.7% to 6.206 million barrels per day from 5.925 million barrels of oil per day in October. Saudi production fell slightly to 8.925 million barrels of oil per day from 8.972 million barrels of oil per day in October. Saudi refineries' crude throughput was down by 0.383 million barrels of oil per day to 2.354 million barrels of oil per day, the data showed, while direct crude burning increased by 20,000 barrels of oil per day to 382,000 barrels of oil per day.
Prices of Canadian and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude oil to Asia jumped after shipping costs rallied on concerns that wider U.S. sanctions on the Russian fleet are tightening ship availability, trade sources said on Tuesday. Asian refiners face a margin squeeze as their costs of crude and shipping have spiked since Washington earlier this month imposed sweeping new sanctions targeting Russian insurers, tankers and oil producers. Discounts for Canadian crude exported via the Trans Mountain Pipeline and delivered to China in April have narrowed $1 to $2 a barrel from the previous month, the sources said. Next, we have the top news in metal market. Iron ore futures traded in a narrow range on Thursday, as investors weighed fresh initiatives by top consumer China to support its equity markets against concerns of higher U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports. The most traded May iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange traded 0.13% higher at 799 yuan, $109.76, a metric ton, as of 0313 GMT. The benchmark February iron ore on the Singapore Exchange ticked down 0.06% to $103.50 a ton. Chinese stocks strengthened in early trading, gaining broad support from Beijing's latest initiative to prompt insurance funds into purchasing shares listed on the mainland.
The London Metal Exchange, LME, plans to launch a consultation on revamping its warehouse storage rules, 4 sources with knowledge of the matter said, after bottlenecks resurfaced last year despite a previous overhaul. Nearly a decade ago, the LME thought it had solved the problem of gridlock in its approved storage facilities with queue-based rent capping, QBRC, rules. QBRC limits the rental income of warehouses to 80 days after the firm that owns the metal has given notice of intention to take delivery or cancelled the warrants, title documents conferring ownership.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
India's rice exports held steady in 2024 despite New Delhi's export curbs, as record-high premium basmati rice shipments offset a decline in overseas sales of non-basmati rice, government and industry officials told Reuters. A steady flow of rice from the world's biggest exporter should help bring down global rice prices and assist New Delhi in reducing stockpiles that have surged to a record high due to a bumper crop. Exports bounced back in the December quarter after exports restrictions were lifted and made up for the shortfall in the first half of the year, said a government official, who asked not to be named as he was not authorized to speak to the media.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.